Good morning, everyone, and happy Monday. So we're set for a pretty big week. We have BBBY exploding in pre-market. This stock is basically up like 100%. It had some pretty good news on how one of the chairmen from GameStop's board, Ryan Cohen, actually revealed a 10% stake in this company. The stock is booming to the upside. Looking at the overall market, like the SPY or just like /ES futures, we can see that they dropped significantly last night. But Tom, they're almost back to even.
Yeah, they are. I cannot believe the SPY almost got all the way back up to Friday's closing price up there around 432. I do have a bit of resistance at 432, so I will be curious to see if we're able to break above this morning. But man, I mean, we've seen a whipsaw effect happening almost every day in the market. It's like we'll see the market up in pre-market, then it flies down at market open. So I'm definitely going to be pessimistic, Mike. I'm not too confident in the market continuing this uptrend here. Hopefully it does happen, but man, I think we might start to see a bit of a sell-off.
I gotcha. You know, it's been interesting to say the least, and I feel like when we have these giant gap down days, just like lately, like let's say the futures gap down like 1.5%, I feel like it's been pretty common to see the market like bounce back up like right before open, and then the rest of the day is just extremely volatile, but very volatile. But you know, looking at today, Tom, you know, futures were down significantly last night. Like I said, the market's basically at break even now, and we are seeing some stocks look pretty good today. Like check out Zoom this morning. Like this stock has just been getting destroyed, and you know, I know it's up almost 5%, which is awesome, but you know, you normally don't see this type of movement out of Zoom. So I'm a little bit optimistic today.
Yeah, I hope we see a nice movement to the upside. Hopefully it's not like Friday where Zoom was flying up at open and then it gave it all right back. I know that these growth stocks have been all over the board, so hopefully they do continue up. It's not just Zoom. I mean, we have Palantir up pretty big in pre-market, up 6%. We have Run starting to fly up as well, so that's great. Even some of these EVs that have been beaten down, like Lucid, are looking pretty good. Lucid had a pretty good double bottom around $22, so I like to see that, especially after the bad earnings they had last week. We have Enphase moving back to the upside as well. So yeah, I mean, my watch list is pretty good today, Mike. I will say I definitely have more stocks in the green than in the red. But what does worry me is that as far as the stocks in the red go, I have Bank of America and JP Morgan leading my watch list to the downside once again. And these banks just continue to sell off in a big way on the daily chart, Mike. Like, look at JP Morgan down around $130 now.
Yeah, it's very true. The banks have just been getting destroyed. So crazy stuff there. But yeah, I mean, the growth stocks are looking decent today, you know. How about like the price of oil, like over like the past 24 hours? It has been all over the place. Like I remember last night, the futures were all the way up to $130 a barrel at their highs, according to Thinkorswim's data. And now they're still elevated, but not as much.
Yeah, we're not even up 1% at this point. I mean, it's still up quite a bit, especially if you look at it over a 2-week period. But you're right. I mean, last night we were at 130. Now we're almost back down to 115. We did fill this gap all the way back to the downside. Those futures had a huge gap whenever they came onto the market with everything going on in Russia. So definitely started pulling back, and we filled that gap back down. So who knows, Mike? Maybe we'll see a continued move back up, maybe like later today or something like that. And it looks like obviously crude's falling, and we have the market kind of recovering as crude started to fall off. So maybe we'll see like if the market starts to pop back down, crude will start to go back up or something similar along those lines. But yeah, crude had a pretty good opening last night, and even gold ended up gapping up in a good way. But like you said, it just gave it all back today.
True that. We have Hunter saying, "Morning. Elon Musk tweeting about me last night." I've not been following his Twitter, but then he said, "You were my favorite hello and my hardest goodbye." Oh, gosh.
I actually saw that whenever he put it on there. I was actually like, I saw that within like 5 seconds of him posting that, believe it or not, Mike. It was pretty funny to see him say that. I know he was going off all weekend on his Twitter, and I actually turned on my notifications for him because they've been pretty interesting lately, to say the least. And talking about Elon, let's see how Tesla's been doing. And Hey, Tesla's having a pretty good day, almost up 3%. And I know Elon's been doing a ton of stuff with sending Starlink over there to Ukraine to help them get internet and stuff, which is always good to hear.
Yeah, true that. Like you said, Tesla's up almost 3%, which is pretty decent. It's nothing crazy, but still, it's definitely a decent move. So
Yeah, they're doing good. And then also like we have Rivian up today, Lucid. Looks like what's another one? We have XPEV doing well. NIO is up. So yeah, it looks like the EV sector is definitely recovering so far today.
how about like Ford and GM?
Oh, I'm a little worried about them. Let's hope they're coming back. Yeah, Ford's doing decent. I will say they're in the red, but they did gap down pretty bad this morning. So they're definitely not moving as well as the other EVs, but they did recover up in a decent way. And it looks like General Motors has a very similar chart to Ford. So not too bad on both of them, but definitely not as good as like Tesla and Lucid.
Yep. Alrighty. I'm just trying to do a quick scan to see some plays that we have moving this morning. I know we mentioned some of the growth stocks, but let me just do a quick scan. In the meantime, we have Michael saying, "Good morning, guys. What do you think of uranium stocks and what would cause them to run? Do you see any positivity for them in the long term?" I do. I've been watching CCJ over like the past 6 months or so. I actually do have like a bullish position on CCJ. There's a lot that goes into like anything involved with commodities, but kind of what we're seeing with even like oil, like for example, with this giant Russia / Ukraine invasion / war. Anytime, like especially like when you have demand at the same level or even increased demand and then supply lowers, it's as simple as that can make prices rise. Other things like sanctions and production numbers with oil play a big role. But I do know that the Ukrainian / Russian region that is having a lot of like war right now. I know they have a lot to do with like nuclear power and things like that. But long story short, I am playing CCJ to the upside.
Yeah, I think they'll be pretty good. I like CCJ. I also like UUUU. Bit of a tongue twister there, but it's 4 U's. It's Energy Fuels. I think that one is my personal favorite, but honestly, they both will do pretty good as long as uranium goes up. They have very, very similar charts, and I think they'll both do decent. Looks like Energy Fuels actually has earnings coming up, so maybe stay away from them for today. But I wonder when CCJ reports. Okay, they actually just reported a little bit ago, so that's good to see with them. Yeah, I think it'll do pretty good, Mike. I know that Ukraine is one of the world leaders as far as uranium goes. I don't know their exact rank there, but I know for the production they are pretty big. So I know that should bring some volatility into this market, to say the least. And who knows? We've been seeing oil fly up, so I would expect uranium to keep rising too.
Yeah, all commodities are booming, Tom. Like, how is wheat doing? Because I know that was going crazy last week, and wow, like I know like WEAT isn't moving in like a crazy. I mean, it is, but not today. But like /ZW, it looks like it's like limited to the upside or something.
Yeah, wow, it looks like it is. It kind of had a nice gap, and then it's just stuck here. I'll definitely have to read in to see this, Mike. It definitely looks like some type of limit or something like that's going on, but definitely strains with that. Let's check out the corn. I know corn is open. Wow, it looks like corn actually kind of gave back some of its gains from last night, believe it or not, but wheat just continues to go crazy. So yeah, the commodities are going insane. Let's check back in maybe on gold and silver. Let's see, GLD, not looking too bad. SLV pulling back as well. So still not flying back to the upside this morning yet, Mike, but who knows? Maybe we'll see something come out of Russia and then gold and silver will start to do a little bit better again. But honestly, I hope that the Russia-Ukraine stuff is almost over at this point. I know it's not, but I did see that they started a 3rd round of talks today, which was nice.
Yeah, it's good to see. We have Iranical saying Clover is up 18%. Let's see. CLOV. Yeah, it's up like 19%. It's looking pretty decent. Tom, this one has just been looking terrible over like the past couple months, but of course it's always good when you see like a nearly 20% up day.
Yeah, it really is. Almost 20%. It just sucks that we're barely up to the highs of last week. Like just last Thursday, we were at the same levels we're at now. So while it is good to see 20%, Mike, it seems like with Clover, we're going to need like 5 more 20% days, man. I mean, this one's been beaten down so bad. I honestly feel a little bit bad for this stock. I mean, we went all the way down to $2, and I know this one was at around $8 to $9 for a long time. So definitely brutal, and I hope it recovers back in a big way.
Yep. Alrighty. So we have Sean saying, what do you think of RIG, R-I-G? I got some shares on Friday. So they're in that like oil and gas like drilling industry, which, you know, it is good in this time. I'm just going to be honest with you, like I don't know enough specifically about this company to give like an accurate, projection for it. But I will say this. While we have seen other oil companies like Exxon Mobil, Chevron, and like even Oxy, OXY trend to the upside for months, RIG has really only trended to the upside over the past week, and that is definitely a concern for me a little bit. Like, for example, like RIG has just been stagnant for like the past year or even longer, and we're just seeing this big upwards move now where like when you look at Exxon Mobil or like anything like that, it broke out back in like early January, and for that reason, like it just in the past, I feel like a lot of these types of setups with RIG, like they're going to be extremely volatile, more volatile than Exxon Mobil and Chevron and Oxy most likely, which can be a good thing. It's just like I feel like they're definitely in terms of fundamentals, like a lower quality than an Exxon Mobil or a Chevron or even an Oxy. So, you know, there's a lot of momentum in this industry right now, and of course, oil prices booming is definitely great for like an oil and gas drilling company, and it has a lot of momentum, so it can do great. I just feel like in terms of fundamentals, it's probably a little bit worse than like Exxon Mobil and things like that.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I would rather play Exxon, Chevron, Oxy, stuff like that. I think it just moves a whole lot better, especially if you're talking about the oil industry overall. I know that these drilling stocks can do pretty good. I will say, Mike, I've been looking at RIG for a long, long time. I was honestly eyeing this one up a lot back in like 2016, 2017, times like that. And I'll be honest, I was really glad I never stuck around with my longer term positions on this one. This one really ended up falling off down to 65 cents. You know, I know a lot of oil plays were down, but like you mentioned, this one was particularly doing a lot worse. So I'd rather trade Oxy and the others as well. I just think they're a lot safer, a lot better. And honestly, they have almost just as good of movement. Like obviously RIG's doing great today. They're up 10%, but you know, we can go look at something like Oxy. I know it's not up 10%, but look at that move on Friday. I mean, that move Friday was great. It was like a nice like 15% day. So you can definitely catch some big moves out of these other ones as well.
Yeah, and I don't want to scare Sean out of the position. Like, RIG can do good. Just know that it will definitely be a lot more volatile. So just be prepared for that. So then we have Head saying, bought the dip on Raytheon on Friday, and it's doing well today. There we go. Yeah, it's up like 1.5% today. That's awesome.
Yeah, it looks really good, actually. I hope these defense plays keep moving up. It looks like they had a bit of a double bottom down there around $98, and this morning they moved back up above $100. So that's nice. I know $100 is always a pretty big psychological level, so hopefully we stick above that. And it looks like we actually hit a bit of resistance we saw from last week around like 102.30. That might be a pretty good like upper level to watch today. If we break that, it might have a pretty good move.
True that. What else do we have going on? Let's see. It looks like X is also breaking out, Tom. Let's see. X, yeah.
I actually like this one a lot, Mike.
Yeah, it's booming.
Yeah, X is on fire. It's actually on the daily looking very, very well. I know it was looking pretty good Friday also, but just continues to go up with these commodities. I know X is a big steel company. Obviously, U.S. Steel has been around forever for anyone who doesn't know steel. They might not be owned by the same parent company or whatever, but I know they've been around for a long, long time. So definitely interesting with this one, Mike. It's continuing to fly up like we see these oil plays do lately, and I just don't know. You know, it's one of those plays, like I love to play it in the short term, but for the longer term, it's so scary to just buy a bunch of shares up here at the top. But I would definitely eye it up for some short-term momentum, especially with it breaking out today.
For sure. Alrighty. What else? We have Jerry saying, any levels for Square? What are you thinking, Tom? SQ.
Ooh, SQ. I know this one's been all over the place lately. It's honestly right around $100, and we actually hit off of a level I had posted right around 108 on my chart for the past few weeks. So 108 will be a pretty good upper resistance in my opinion. And as we go to the downside, I know that my support down here is closer to 101 than it is 100, but I would eye up $100. That's a huge, huge psychological level there. So if Square falls below 100, I think it could make for a pretty good trade to the downside, but I don't know, Mike. This one might be pretty tough. It might get stuck within this range today. I think it's going to matter on what the overall tech sector does. Like if we see tech just start tanking down, Square will probably continue down too. But if we see the overall tech sector start to go up, I think Square might have a pretty decent opportunity to go up and maybe break that upper resistance today.
Square was looking so good just like a couple weeks ago when it had that giant move from earnings. And it's not that it's looking terrible now. It's just that it's been a rough market, especially for these like tech and growth stocks. But think about it, like just a couple days ago, this thing was at like 132.
Yeah, it actually was. That's a pretty big move, Mike, back to the downside, actually. So pretty scary there. I know, like you mentioned, they were doing really good with the earnings, and I think they were doing especially well because I think their guidance went well. So I'm really hoping to see them maybe do better this year, and I hope they just hold above $100 in the short term. As far as shorter term trades go, as long as they hold 100, I think they'll do pretty solid here.
All right, there we go. It looks like the market is actually coming back down, Tom. I don't know if you've been seeing this, but the SPY's been. It's not that it's crashing by any means. It's just that we did have a big recovery in pre-market, and it looks like we're definitely seeing a decent amount of profit taking.
Yeah, we definitely are. The SPY is coming right back down off that 432 resistance and is making for some volatile trading, like you mentioned, and it's going to be a tough day again. I know it's been a very tough past few weeks to trade. The market's been all over the place, and it's just it's continuing that type of movement today. Hopefully, we just see a nice continuation one way or the other. I have a feeling though, Mike, that we're gonna probably get stuck and maybe have a lot of volatility today. So hopefully, we see a nice continuation, but it's not looking good, Mike. We have so many levels coming up. Even if we keep falling down, there's lots of supports coming up from earlier this morning. And then even if we rise, there's so many big levels from last week. It's going to be a tough one today.
For sure. Alrighty. We also have Jerry mentioning good old DraftKings, Tom. This one's getting smacked this morning. It's down like 5.5%. I know that they got downgraded from a Argus research to hold. But I did see this. I'm looking through the DraftKings news right now, and it looks like the director on DraftKings board just bought a total of 50,000 shares at an average price of $23.28. That's around $1.16 million that they put into buying the shares. And yeah, I mean, that's the recent news I'm seeing with that downgrade from buy to hold. So yeah, I mean, it's getting smacked, though.
Yeah, it really is. It's always good to see insiders buying shares, but, the stock obviously is giving the gains right back, and, man, we're down below $20 now. That's definitely not good. I know $20 has been a pretty good support for DraftKings in the past, it's never good to see them break support like this, but I will say they have that low down there around $16, and they've bounced a lot, like right around $17.50, so maybe we'll see a bounce there again. I think that would be nice to see, but obviously, DraftKings is going to be really volatile in the short term, and I know we've been pretty big on them, Mike, and I still like them for the long term. I know I still believe that they'll do pretty decent, and obviously we can't predict the future 100%, but I will say with all the states legalizing sports betting, and even with the way New York legalized last year, I expect them to have a little bit better of a year this year.
I think they're going to do great long term. Short term it really hurts, but long term, I am still very bullish on them, and I think that they're going to do very good. And then even Jerry said that, just growth in general is not looking too hot today and lately. Like DraftKings down 5.5%. We had, what else? What were we just? Oh, Square. We had Square down decently today. You look at some of the other like tech plays, like a lot of my watch list is definitely red today.
Yeah, and honestly, a lot of stocks that were going up in the beginning, like Zoom, started just turning like right back over again. I know Zoom had a similar move to this on Friday, and I hope these growth stocks continue up, but it's definitely not looking good. They're turning back over as of now, and I'm starting to see a lot start to fall back off into the red. I know like even stocks like Netflix are still back in the red, which is unfortunate to see. Like Netflix just can't get going, Mike. I know they've been on a steep downtrend over the past few months as well. And man, it looks like they're going to be retesting support here pretty soon. This is it's getting scary for some of these companies like Netflix, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat. I mean, they just all continue to fall off, especially Facebook. I mean, is it ever going to stop at this point? We're well below $200 and it just keeps going. I mean, I'm confident in them for the long term. It's just, man, in the short term, these stocks just continue to get crushed. It's very demoralizing if you are in them for the longer term. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it definitely hurts short term, but then again, it's like, when these stocks fall, that's when the opportunity is. Like, for me, like, it's more risky to, for example, if we go back to Facebook really quickly, it's more risky to buy Facebook at $340 than it is to buy it at, $195. Like, you're paying a lower valuation when you're buying the stock lower. Even though it's usually more volatile when the stock's lower, that's ultimately when you want to be buying. So I definitely know what you mean, though, because it hurts. Like, you'll buy the dip and then, like, it'll just keep dipping lower and lower and lower. But then again, for the long term, if you're setting yourself up for success, it'll be pretty great.
Yeah, definitely. And I hope nobody sells out of any positions like that or anything just because I was worried about it going down. And yeah, like Mike said, it should do pretty good for the long term. It's just the short term is just definitely volatile. It's been crazy lately. It's not even just Facebook, it's growth in general. And then even Facebook's competitors have had the same type of movement with Twitter, Snapchat, Pinterest. They've all been moving down like this. So it's not just Facebook. And then we can't forget, Mike, we have Apple coming out with these privacy change agreements hurting Facebook. And then I hear Google's going to do the same stuff with their privacy changes. So, it's obviously not good short-term news, but for the long term, keep in mind, Facebook's in some pretty big stuff right now, especially with the metaverse. I think that's going to be pretty big over the next 10 years. I've seen a lot of stuff, especially, Mike, like regarding kids lately, that has had a lot of metaverse stuff. Like I know lots of video games and stuff like that are starting to implement metaverse type deals. So definitely interesting. And I feel like that'll be a really big sector as it starts to get going. And we've even seen some big ETFs like Meta start to come onto the market with all the talks going on. So definitely interesting there.
True that. Yeah, and then they even own Oculus. Facebook owns Oculus, which has been huge with virtual reality. So that's awesome, and it should be pretty good for the long term. We have Alex saying, can you take a look at resistance for SLB? Let's see, SLB. I would say there's a pretty big resistance right around that high from like a couple weeks ago, right around 42.64. Tom, like, do you have any other levels I missed or anything like that?
Yeah, let's check like the max weekly chart. Maybe that'll give us some more insight, but keep in mind, we're going back like 2 or 3 years at this point, so I'm not sure how well these resistances are going to hold up at this point, but I would say use the level from a few weeks ago. I think that would be the level to look at. Let's get the exact number on it really quick. Looks like that high was right around like 42.70, so I would say if you could break 42.70, you could have a pretty good move, but I will say, Mike, this stock, SLB, has been doing pretty well the past few months, and I will say I like the setup on this. It looks like a pretty nice setup. It's definitely bullish in my opinion. That IV's starting to fly, which is going to hurt the calls, but I will say though, it's definitely breaking out in a pretty good way.
Yep. Tom, have you seen Kroger? This thing is booming.
Yeah, I was actually eyeing this one up last week with their earnings, but they continued to go up. I mean, this is an insane move, Mike. We're up 2.6% today. Ever since the past couple of weeks, like let's see from the low to the high how much this one's up, and it's up almost like 40% here. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely having a good move, Mike. And I know that some of these, personally, I've been bullish on a lot of these grocery stores and a lot of these companies that sell products at the grocery store. So Kroger going up is a pretty good thing in my opinion. I know that stocks like Walmart have also been doing pretty good.
Yep, big time. Alrighty, so I'm just doing a quick scan to see what else we have moving really quickly. It looks like Oxy is back towards its highs. Not sure if you saw that one or not, but it's definitely running again.
Yeah, this one's big, Mike. I know we talked about this one yesterday, and it's especially interesting to me how Warren Buffett has been buying into this one. And of course, we wake up and oil goes up to $130 a barrel overnight last night. Like, wow. I mean, it was insane to see how high that went. But, Oxy is starting to pull back today. I believe that was a crazy position by Buffett, Mike. I mean, he's been buying in at all types of prices. I believe I actually still have the article up here. Yeah, Berkshire Hathaway reveals their position. So he's pretty much been buying in at prices ranging from $47 to $56.45. And that's with 61 million shares. So that's insane to see. They said he did buy 21 million shares before Tuesday, but as far as last Tuesday, ever since then, he's just been buying this one up, Mike, and even at some pretty high prices. So it's definitely an interesting position. And I know that the U.S. has been talking about banning the purchase of Russian oil. And if that happens, I mean, expect the prices of oil to start flying, kind of like what we saw yesterday.
Yep. All right, we have Rohan saying, any energy companies I should get into? I'm going to say no. I feel like at this point it's too late. Like, I feel like buying Exxon Mobil at 85, I feel like it's just too late, to be honest. Like, Exxon can go up to 95 in the next couple weeks, but it's like, is it worth the risk? To me, it's not. But, like, if you're trying to play it for the short term, it can be good. But, like, I just feel like a lot of people are just a little bit late with this whole oil move. I feel like if you're trying to play the conflict, push, like the uncertainty push, I personally would look at gold and silver, because in the worst case scenario where let's say oil just tanks down and the hype leaves, like gold and silver historically have been amazing hedges against inflation. They're at really good levels, and I feel like a lot of governments are not pushing to stop gold and silver. For example, I know a lot of countries, especially in the U.S. right now, it's all about clean energy, eliminating the use of oil, and just focusing on clean energy. And it's not like we're seeing like anything even similar to that with gold and silver. So for that reason, I just like gold and silver a lot more than oil at this price point in terms of like a risk reward level, and then just like a price level, to be honest.
Yeah, I do too. I do think for the short term, oil will be pretty interesting to play to the upside, but keep in mind, I'm talking about short term as in like over the next couple of hours. That's how long I like to play these oil plays. But as far as like buying and holding maybe some shares for the next couple of weeks or something, I definitely don't like doing that right now. I really don't like getting shares for the long term, Mike. To me, that's just definitely off the table with how high it's been. And like you mentioned, it's already went up quite a bit. I mean, look at Exxon here from the low of back in December to now. Exxon's up like 46, almost 50% at this point. Some are up even more. Like Oxy's been going just straight up insane. Like from the low of December to now, Oxy's pretty much up over 120%. So if that's not volatile, I don't know what is. But I definitely would not be buying in up here personally. And Mike, like if you want to get into some of these energy companies, I know earlier we talked about CCJ. Would you think that CCJ might be like a bit of a better, like longer term pickup here than like the oil plays? I know obviously we're not bullish on oil too much right here, especially for the long term. But whenever we look at these stocks like CCJ and UUUU, I think those companies could be pretty good here, especially given, Ukraine deals with uranium and stuff like that. That doesn't mean that they're going to explode like oil or anything, but I feel like it'll be a little bit safer, and you are still getting some exposure to energy, which is good.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I am long on CCJ, but I'm also long on like Enphase and Run too. So it's like, I feel like the smartest move would just like be to grab up multiple different stocks in industries that you want to have exposure to. Personally, I don't want any exposure to oil. That's just how I feel right now. But I am willing to have exposure to some of these solar plays like Enphase and Sunrun. I'm also willing to have exposure to some of the nuclear energy plays like CCJ. So that's just what I'm doing. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but I just feel like at this point, oil is not worth the risk.
Yeah, I don't either.
Exxon Mobil right now is at 85, 86. It can boom up to 100 next week. Short term, anything can happen. I mean, who thought, let's say like a month or two ago, who thought that Russia would be straight up invading Ukraine? Like the geopolitical environment that we're in right now is extremely unpredictable, and nobody knows what's going to happen. So for that reason, oil could be or Exxon Mobil could be at 100 next week, or it could be at 70. Like, it's going to be very volatile, and for me, it's just not worth the risk. But I feel like with gold and silver specifically, they will hold up a lot better if everything resolves itself in Russia and Ukraine. I feel like it's at a good level, especially with how inflation has been. Historically, gold and silver have been great inflation hedges, and I just like them a lot more. So it's just it's really just a balance of risk and reward, and the price you pay. And for me, it just doesn't make sense with oil right now.
Yeah, me either. It's just up so much. I feel like short term it can make for some really good trades in the short term, like I mentioned before. But if you're buying anything to hold for like a couple of weeks, or you're swinging it or something, I just think it's so unpredictable. Kind of like what Mike said, and I'd rather get gold and silver too. I'll tell you what, Mike, these gold call options from a couple months ago are on fire. So you can definitely make a lot with gold and silver. I know it looks like on the chart here, oh, GLD only went from 167 to 185. That's nothing, right? But, that's nothing for the stock. But keep in mind that these GLD options have been going up in a major way. And look at the way the IV has been rising too. Like some of these options on these commodities, Mike, are pretty insane. I know that on the chart, Oxy might look more enticing because it went up 120%. But keep in mind, you can get some pretty safe options on some of these commodities that do pretty well also. I'm not saying that necessarily right now with IV this high it's going to be the best, but you have to obviously get it at the right time. But in the end, though, I definitely agree with you, Mike.
All right. We have Jason saying, any long-term moves for today? I mean, I don't intend to make any specific moves today. Some of the long-term plays I'm holding, we have Zoom, DraftKings, Upwork, Disney, what else? Disney. I have some exposure to China. Redfin's pretty good in my opinion. Corsair, Logitech, Palantir's pretty decent, and stuff like that. Enphase is decent as well. So it really just depends on your, I guess you can say, risk tolerance. Like if you're looking for like a very, very safe play, check out some of these major indices like the S&P 500, Dow, and NASDAQ. But if you're looking for a little bit, I guess you can say, more risk with higher growth potential, check out some of these individual stocks, especially the growth stocks, which I just mentioned a lot of them.
Yeah, a lot of those growth stocks are at pretty good price points to buy for the long term, of course. Some stocks that I've been really liking lately for the longer term have been some of the safer ones, to be honest, Mike. Like some of my plays, like Kraft Heinz, for example, has been doing pretty well in the short term. I really like this one. I feel like this one will be pretty good for the next couple of years. They have a pretty long road to recovery, but I do like them for the long term. They pay a pretty good dividend too, which is decent. I know another one I've been eyeing up in the short term has been Intel. I know obviously Intel's not everybody's favorite, but I feel like that as far as like company fundamentals go and stuff like that, they'll do decent. They're not a company that I expect to grow, 200, 300% over the next few years or anything like that. But I like the way they're holding between this range. It looks pretty good, especially on the daily chart off of support down there. But I really like these growth plays for the long term, Mike. Like, of course, Kraft and Intel are some of my favorites, but my portfolio is just riddled with like DraftKings, Corsair, AI, ChargePoint, Peloton, Palantir. Like, there's just so many stocks that I like for the long term that are really low right now. And I feel like that some of these are just such good pickups, Mike. Like if we see like Palantir, for example, recover back over the next 3 years, let's just be like conservative. Like let's just say they only make it up to $20. I mean, you're looking at an 83% increase. We're not even talking about if it went up to highs of like 27 or even 30. That would be like 170%. I can't believe it, how big a discount some of these stocks are at, Mike. I know Palantir is one that we've really liked over the past year, and obviously, like we mentioned earlier, DraftKings is like leading my watch list to the downside today, but I feel like they're just at such a good level to buy, especially when you consider if they recover even halfway, you're moving like up 100%. It's insane.
Yeah, and just one thing to be completely fair is that, a lot of these plays were, very hyped up and I guess you can say overvalued, including DraftKings at one point, I feel like now it's undervalued to me, but, to be fair, like some of these growth plays were definitely trading at some insane valuations, whether you're looking at DraftKings, Palantir, or even Zoom. Zoom at one point was just under like $600. Now it's at like 110, and it's posting significantly more revenue now than when it was at like 588. So, these growth companies do have a decent amount of work to do in order to justify their valuation, but they also have a ton of growth potential, and there's a good chance that a lot of these growth companies can be huge in a couple years from now.
Yeah, and I think that as long as you have a nice, diverse portfolio, and like let's say you grab some safer companies, maybe you grab some Walmart, some Kraft Heinz, some Coca-Cola, some Carrier, maybe some stocks like that, and then you maybe pick up some Zoom, some Palantir, some DraftKings. I feel like that'd be a really good mix of stocks for the longer term, especially, if we start to see the overall market recover. I feel like all of those stocks have a pretty good chance to do decent. So I think just getting a nice mix of stocks for the long term is definitely the way to go. And like I said, just definitely eye up both. Like if you really love DraftKings for the long term, maybe then just make sure that you grab another stock for the longer term too. Maybe like Coca-Cola or something safe just to hedge yourself. Because I'll tell you what, Mike, over the past few weeks, if I didn't have some of these hedges in place, I would have been pretty upset seeing Zoom, DraftKings, and everything like that flying down.
For sure. We have Iranical saying, do you think it's a good time for pick some SEE shares? Let's see, SEE. Sealed Air. I don't really follow this company too much, so I don't really have an answer for you on that one. Their long-term chart looks pretty good, but honestly, I just don't know enough about the company to give you an accurate answer. Like I said, their chart looks good, and they do have a decent support level forming right around, I guess you can say right around that like $62 level, Tom. It bounced off of that level a lot in the past, and then it looks like you're even hovering around a support right around like 63 or so.
Yeah, there's definitely like lots of movement right around there. There's been like a few wicks, like right around the red line. I put the red line like almost right on 62. It's pretty close, but yeah, there's just lots of movement right around there. So definitely eye that up as a support as it starts to fall down. I will say though, Mike, this stock has been on a pretty good uptrend ever since COVID, and it's been moving up in a pretty safe way too. Like it hasn't had any crazy moves necessarily, but I will say it's up quite a bit, and it is kind of double topping at $70. I would almost expect this one to start to consolidate maybe for the next few weeks. I don't know anything about the company fundamentally or anything. It does look like their earnings have been growing in a pretty decent way, which is nice to see always, but I definitely have to eye it up on those charts there because it's just, obviously, Mike, it's a pretty crazy market right now. And with the way things are starting to look, I just feel like that, especially with how much this one's risen, I feel like it could start to turn over. But like you mentioned, we have to do a deeper dive on this.
Yep. Then we have Alex saying MOS still running up like crazy. Yes, it is. That potash play is booming. MOS is running, IPI is running, and even like NTR is looking pretty decent. That one's also up like 6% or so.
Oh my gosh, Mike. IPI is up 8.7%. Like, what is going on with these potash plays? This is getting insane. And I believe IPI even has earnings after hours tonight, which is going to be insane. Yeah, they do. So that's going to make it even more volatile. But wow, I mean, it's just continuing to fly up. I cannot believe the way that the daily chart looks for some of these plays, Mike. And they honestly are just like oil plays to me. Like if oil's overextended in the short term, so are these. So, I mean, look at how high this is, $77. Like, boy, this has been a crazy uptrend. It's been crazy for these potash plays, oil plays, commodities. I mean, I just can't believe how high some of these are getting.
Yeah, it is crazy. It's just a matter of time before we see some of the sellers come in, just like you said with oil kind of, and like even X, like I love to see giant green days day after day after day after day after day, but one of those days it's going to be a pretty brutal red candle, it's just a matter of time. So just be careful. Like it's awesome to see, like especially for like a short-term trader, you love to see giant green days on oil and all that stuff, but remember, like, can't last forever.
Yeah, it definitely can't. And honestly, Mike, like I'm just trying to make up some like hypothetical scenarios here that might make some of these plays fall back down. So like obviously these plays have been flying up as Russia's been invading Ukraine. I know Russia and Ukraine, at least it came through our popular news tab this morning. It said that they were going to start some talks today again. So maybe if something positive comes out of that, we could see some of these stocks start to fall back down, and especially like oil and stuff fall back down too. I think that it's definitely on the table. So like if some type of ceasefire or like some type of peace talks or something like that end up becoming successful, I think that these plays will start to pull back in a pretty major way. But I mean, man, until that happens, it looks like this momentum's just going to keep going. I mean, I can't believe it's up this much again, 7%. At market open today, Mike, I thought some of these plays were going to start to pull back down today, but boy, they rocketed right back.
Yeah, exactly. We have Corbin saying LMT is up too. Yeah, Lockheed has been really running up too, and just a lot of the defense stocks, Tom, have just been, breaking out and really running to the upside, like Lockheed Martin, Northrop, and like Raytheon's looking okay, and then even like General Dynamics is booming too.
Yeah, they're looking really good. Northrop's up 4.2%, looking really good. RTX was having a pretty good move earlier. Yeah, I hope that RTX can break that pre-market high of a couple days ago and the high of today. Like if they could break out above like 102.35, I think we could start to see a pretty big move. I actually really like this setup with RTX, Mike. I really honestly, like over the next few minutes, I wouldn't be surprised if this green candle started breaking out. It looks pretty bullish, especially with the rest of the sector starting to rise too. Like you mentioned at the beginning, Lockheed is looking amazing, especially on that daily chart. Wow, I mean, Mike, I hate to say it, but Lockheed's even starting to look like the oil plays at this point. Like this is starting to become some crazy movement. And look at Lockheed, like on the Max Weekly, they're really breaking that all-time high.
Yeah, very true. Very true. All right, so let's do a quick check-in with the overall market really quickly. It looks like we are now down 1%. Just at open, Tom, we were basically at even, but looks like we're definitely giving back that recovery.
Wow, we are. It's not looking good. I know there's a big resistance at 432, and that's definitely going to be a tough level to get through. It looks like there's a lot of sellers right there, and as we've been seeing lately, as if the market's up a lot in pre-market, we've been seeing some pretty weird pullbacks. So looks like it's happening once again. If we start to break through these major supports, like at 427 and then maybe 426, and especially at that low of day down there around 423.50, I'll be pretty worried, Mike. And I know that later on this week, we do have some pretty big inflation data coming out, but I know that next week we have those FOMC meetings. So it's not going to be slowing down anytime soon. This volatility is probably going to stick around at least for the next couple weeks.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to be very crazy, like anything, especially with, these crazy situations that we have going on in Ukraine and Russia. It's crazy, Tom. It's, I don't know, it's pretty sad.
Yeah, it is. And look at TLT, Mike. I mean, I know TLT hasn't been the most popular thing since the beginning of this year, but it's been starting to fly back down in a pretty major way. I know that it flew up last year and started consolidating a little bit, but man, I mean, it's starting to move it to the downside in a pretty good way again. I know today it's not necessarily falling off in a major way, but I feel like over the past couple of months, this one's really been going down. And I know that as rates go up, people have been really worried about this one. So I don't know, Mike. I mean, it's going to be especially crazy for some of these plays like TLT and then TBT. It's going to be a very volatile next couple of weeks, especially with the FOMC stuff going on.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Tom, well, do you have any last-minute plays or anything before we close out of today's stream?
Yeah, it's never good when we see DraftKings leading my watch list to the downside, down 7%. these cruise lines and airlines just also continue to fall, Mike. Like Carnival Cruise Lines is down 4% again. They're starting to fall off. I know Delta Airlines is starting to look awful as well. And I know a lot of people were hitting Warren Buffett for selling out of his airlines back during the COVID pandemic. And with the way they're starting to fall down, Mike, I mean, maybe he was smart for doing that. I don't know the exact number he sold at, but man, I mean, like American Airlines is falling back down to levels we were at back in 2020. So it's definitely not looking good in the short term. And like I've mentioned in the past, I kind of was hoping to see these airlines start to move back up. But as far as these reopening plays, we're seeing some extended moves back down. And I would not be surprised if these ones continue down. So maybe in the short term, these will be make for some pretty decent, like quick in and out scalp plays to the downside if you see it like break the lower levels or something like that. But definitely not good, Mike. I was hoping these airlines would start to do better, especially with the overall market going down. I just know that sometimes, those airlines just they have a mind of their own. And I was hoping that as we got into this summer, we would start to see some more upwards movement here.
Yeah, true that. Well, thank you guys so much for watching today's stream. Before we close out, I just want to personally thank everyone. So shout out Iranical, Vicky, Trading Lifestyle, Hunter, Michael, Head, Sean, Jerry, George, Alex, Rohan, Jason, and Corbin. Thank you guys so much for joining today's stream. We had a great time, and the market is unfortunately getting smacked, but some of these energy plays are still booming up, and even some of these defense plays are also booming up. So keep an eye on those. But besides that, have a great rest of your day.